Welcome to the Scottish Watches podcast. This is the ones to watch out for at Watches and Wonders, plus some other things that have been happening during the week just ahead of the world's most prestigious, grand, not finale because that comes at the end of the year. This is the premier watch event. It happens every single year. If you're new to watches, new to the industry, new to the community, you may not have heard of Watches and Wonders before, but you're definitely going to know all about it by the end of today. And we have two very cool co-hosts with me. We have got Barbara Blumbo all the way from the United States of America. How are you doing, Barbara?
Hey, Scottish Watches land. Nice to see you, I guess, right? Because this is going on YouTube.
Yes, we built the studios back up. So yes, everything will be appearing on YouTube as of now. We have had a little bit of a hiatus, moving house, creating a new studio. Dave has got his all sorted out, my one all sorted out. Just leaves you, Barbara. You're going to have to do something as well.
So I'm going to be selling my house soon, so that's a whole other thing. But maybe in my new tiny apartment, I'll set up a studio. How about that? You said that there were two very cool, and yet Dave is here. So are you including yourself in that one?
I count myself twice, you know.
Okay.
But Dave is here. Dave Sharp, how are things?
Very pointy, yes. Everything's very good. In fact, it's nice to see you're back to that very special dungeon-like studio again.
Why, thank you. I appreciate it. But anyway, enough of that hullabaloo. Time to talk about watches. And the first thing we're going to do is tell everybody to check the show notes. Click the link in your podcast player if you're watching this on YouTube. That link will be in the description at the top. That'll take you to our website and all the pictures, information, tech spec, and links to the products that we're talking about and the events that we are going to be explaining more about, because Watches and Wonders isn't just what happens within PAL Expo. There are the things that happen before, after, during, and at night time. Plus there's lots of other bits and pieces. Barbara's here to give her take on our first trip to Scotland and our first trip to British Watchmakers Day. I know that is already now a sort of distant memory, but she has a lot of things to say. And we'll probably crack off and ask Dave what he's been up to first.
You're going to crack off? That's an unusual way of saying things, but yes.
I didn't say crack one off.
Crack off, okay, well,
you
we'll
actually
go
did
with
say
that.
crack off.
Yes, he did, exactly, yes. He got me back in the last episode, but yes, I'm sure he'll edit this out finely for himself in this one.
No, I'll leave it.
We'll leave it good. Well, we should get off because one of our friends,
We're going to get off. Oh, Jesus Christ.
I mean, you have to, if you're going to start this game, you need to lean heavily into it. But yes, indeed, we are going to talk about a watch, a release that's got a world's first in it. And this is from a friend of the brand that we spent some time, well, that being me and Ricky, or Ricky and I, if I'm being more correct. We're over in Beale visiting Formex and, of course, Raphael. We got to see some things that hadn't been released yet, but they now are out in the wild. In fact, they were out in the wild in New York, and Barbara got along to see it. So we should talk about it, and we will definitely get some feedback from Barbara, because she has seen this in the hand as well, although we did get to have a sneaky peek before the launch of this watch as well. And what we're talking about, this is the Formex Essence Ceramica Skeleton Kosk Collection. There's a mouthful of a word for you. A watch that has the world's first micro-adjustable ceramic bracelet. And you're probably thinking, that's going to be expensive. Well, it's not inexpensive, but it's definitely massively affordable compared to what many brands would be charging for this type of technology being integrated to watches, well under $5,000 US. So yes, Ricky, we got to have a look at this one over in Switzerland, and it's finally out in the open.
It is. This is a watch we've been alluding to for a number of months, actually, because Raph told us that something was being produced behind the scenes. He is a guy that will not release something to the public and then use his customers, his clients, and his friends as test subjects. There's no guinea pigs when it comes to Formex. So he wanted to make sure that what he produced that was released to the eager masses was going to work and work properly. So there was lots of testing, trials and tribulations along the way. And we just wanted to take this information and let everybody know, because Maurice Lacroix released a ceramic watch that me and Dave quite liked, but we knew this was coming down the line. And no offence, no disrespect to ML, but this one here, because Dexel behind the scenes produce componentry for other Swiss watchmakers that maybe charge 100 grand for different watches made of ceramic, we knew this one was going to be something special. And when we were across in Switzerland last month, we popped in to see Chapek on the way to Formex headquarters. We actually got to see the watchmakers, the designers, all the people that are involved in the processes. And the processes, we got to see them too. We got to see the machinery that actually crafts and sculpts lots of different componentry for lots of different brands, including Formex.
Well, before we get to Barbara's opinion on it, because again, she's seen this in person, let's give you a quick overview of what this watch is all about. This is Formex's 25th anniversary. We've talked a lot about anniversaries over the last few months, many brands celebrating anniversaries, but Formex is one of the newer brands, but 25 years is certainly a significant milestone and definitely worthy of being celebrated. They are well known for using high-tech materials, for doing quite innovative things. They've got an amazing little adjustable clasp as well. They've got their suspension system, and of course, they are well known for using quite interesting stone dials in many of their watches. Usually stone dials that cost considerably more from many other brands. They're bringing that type of kind of watchmaking and decoration and dial materials to a much more affordable end of the market. This collection of watches here, there are 4 in total. There are only 88 pieces of each, so it is a relatively limited edition piece, and I think these are going to fly. So what have we got here? Well, of course, the big news is about this adjustable clasp, so we should really start with that. A full ceramic bracelet, and by full ceramic, we do mean full ceramic. It's not a metal bracelet with a thin veneer of ceramic over it, but you've got this special adjustable clasp on it, and you can, I guess, pop it open, and it allows you to kind of ratchet it out, and you can push it in to allow it to be tightened up as well. You've got 4 1.25mm increment adjustments, which gives you a total of 5mm, which is generally speaking around about 1 full link in most watches. So plenty of adjustment for those colder days, those warmer days. I think the only comparable system to it maybe is someone like Tudor's T-Fit system, and let's be honest, they've got Big Brother Rolex paying all the bills, so the fact that Formex have been able to do something like this and in ceramic and at the price they're talking about is pretty impressive, it has to be said. Really cleverly done. You've got a little engraved Formex logo on that ceramic clasp, and that is really the utilization of how you make all the adjustments. So even compared to many of the other well adjustable clasps out there, it's a much more simple, easy to use system. But the watch itself, well, it was launched in New York, and it's a pretty nice size point here. 100 meters of water resistance, 41mm in diameter, just over 11mm in height, and 46mm lug to lug, so super wearable. Based around a Sellita SW200 caliber that has been skeletonized with the 41-hour power reserve, and of course, as we mentioned, it's COSC certified, so you've got that -4+6 accuracy on there. And we did say there's 4 variants. What are they? Well, 3 of them are the Stradial variants, however we pronounce that word. Sounds Italian. Barbara will probably correct me on that.
Not Stradale, such as Lamborghini.
Well, let's go with that. Sounds good.
Any Italians on the show today that could maybe chime in on that one?
You guys are adorable. Yeah, I'm going with Ricky on this one.
There we go. I like Stradale better. It sounds much more like a premium breed of dog. But anyway, we'll go with that.
Straddling Dale? Who's Dale? We've not met Dale yet.
You realize Raph is like half Italian, right? So we're going to like actually do it because he's also half Italian.
I think actually he technically calls himself Swiss Italian, which is like Italian but better than Italian. I think that's how they would generally view it. But that's a very Swiss thing. Anyway, let's see, what are these 4 variants? Well, you've got one that's, I guess, the most neutral of them. You've got the kind of black and white going on. You've got the blackened hands, and you've got the darkened indices with the white superluminova. You've got the blue variant that gives you a kind of blue superluminova, again with the blackened hands and indices. And you've got the violet variant, which has got the purple superluminova, again, the darkened hands and indices with that kind of black finishing, but with that kind of purple superluminova. And then you've got the one that's fractionally more premium. And by premium, I mean $150 more. So we're not talking a lot more. And that one's got the rose gold hands and indices on it as well. So yeah, super nice watch. Went on sale on March the 21st. So as you're listening to this in and around the 24th, you probably want to go on the website quickly and check if they're still available, because these are likely to sell out pretty toot sweet, I would suggest. Shipping begins in July, and price point is going to be $4,250. I did say well under $5,000, and this is a good $750 under. You could buy yourself another nice watch with $750, to be honest. And you've got a slightly premium on the GT version, which is $4,390. So again, still considerably under $4,500. Amazing price point. Barbara, you've seen this, you've played with it. We've been lucky enough to play with it, but you saw it at the launch. How did the launch go, and what did you think of the watch?
Thank you very much for guiding me in here.
Fanar.
Huck too.
Guided me in. That's a lovely way to round out the back end.
So $150 extra. That's about what you spent for a good time last time you were in New York, right, Dave? When you were there for Wind Up Watch Fair?
I spent considerably less.
Oh, come on. So how many teeth didn't she have? I guess is what I should ask.
You were assuming it was a she?
Well, yeah, I'm not. I'm really not assuming, but I guess it's an automatic guess. So I will go back to what I was saying. Stop interrupting me, Dave. Okay. I get that enough here in the United States. Misael, that was a really nice face to see because you guys, we don't often get to see Misael. We talk about Misael. Misael's doing the show notes and everything, but he was at the event. He was one of the first faces that I saw at the event. So it was really lovely to see. This was their largest event they've ever had, ever, Formex. The 25th anniversary, I was actually shocked to find that out because I know they've done things before in Geneva or in parts of Switzerland at different shows. They've never had an event this big. They had it at Madame Maquette's, which is where last year during wind up / watch time week, so the whole like New York, watch event week that they have, Red Bar always has on that Wednesday night, they always do an Independence night. And last year it was at a place called Madame Maquette's, which is on, I think, like 53rd and 2nd, right around 53rd and 2nd. And that's where, and actually Formex was there last year. And I think that's why Marcus was like, oh God, this space is amazing. It's a 2-floor space. You can go upstairs, amazing bartenders. Actually, one of the bartenders was an Irish guy who was just absolutely darling.
To be sure.
Oh, Ricky.
Yeah, it was the largest event they ever had. They had all of their collectors come in. U.S. press, obviously from the big outlets, were all there. Major YouTubers. I want to say influencers, but I think it was mostly YouTubers. Kathleen was there from Red Bar. Adam didn't get a chance to make it out, but a lot of Red Bar crew members were there who own Formex watches. Yeah, I mean, it was extraordinary. Roger with Watch Time actually moderated a discussion with Raf because he's been with them. I wouldn't say for the last 25 years because I asked Roger about that, but he's been with them for a really long time. And like has followed their journey and has written about them when he was writing for other publications. So it was nice. It was a really nice talk, really nice discussion. Obviously it was a very dark space. So it was tough to take pictures. I'm only using a cell phone, but it was brilliant for the loom. Like you really got to see these pieces in their element with regard to, how the looms were working and the purples and the blues. I mean, it was really, really extraordinary. Obviously, I'm a fan of the Essence because I have the Malachite version. And I'm a fan of Rafts. And like we've talked about before, I know Ricky you and I have talked about it. It's easier to write about someone. It's easier to talk about someone, to YouTube someone when you actually like the human being, when you like the person, when they're kind to you, when they treat you well, and when they're genuine. And, obviously Ricky Raff sat next to us, at our table at your wedding. I mean, this is a person who clearly cares about you. But he puts his money where his mouth is. Like, it isn't just like, oh, let me invite these guys because I want them to talk about me or write about me. He just genuinely is that good of a human being. And Marcus as well, and his whole team, James, and obviously, Ms. was helping them out. It was a major event for them. It was the most major event they've ever had. So, congrats to them on the 25th anniversary and on their launch. I thought their launch went swimmingly. Ralph said he spent way more than he thought he was going to spend once he saw the bar tab, because he was like, damn it.
That's because Dave was there.
The Americans could drink, man. Yeah, the Americans can really drink. Yeah, which they can.
So check the show notes. All the information will be in there. It will tell you all about the new release from Formex, the different colorways, the variations. And if you are coming across the Watches and Wonders on the public days, or maybe you have got a media accreditation and you have got a pass to get in, they will not be that far away. So again, check the show notes. All the details have been there. Now, one of the companies that will be attending, and they've attended so many events in the past that we've been at, we actually chatted to the main man himself when we were at Dubai Watch Week many, many years ago during the height of the pandemic, and that's Chronoswiss. One of our favourite things to do every year is to go across to their booth because they don't just present the new novelties, they don't just show you the current range. They've usually got master watchmakers with the machinery they use to do those crazy dials, and you can see how 200, 300-year-old technologies are actually used in modern day watchmaking. So Dave, what have they got coming out? Because it's already out just now. They've kind of jumped the gun a little bit.
Yeah, Chronoswiss, I think it's fair to say that they've always had a pretty strong DNA when it comes to their design language in terms of what their watches look like. You expect that big onion crown, you expect the coin edge bezel, and you usually expect some form of kind of retrograde display somewhere. That all combined with quite traditional artisanal finishing like guilloche and all of these types of engine turning, rose turning, all of these types of effects they've used. They've obviously also used Grand Fou enamel, different PVD coatings. but they also interdisperse them with these really punchy, bright colours typically. We've seen some amazing tangerine oranges, we've seen some violets and lots of other colours over the years. Now, they've done something that definitely maintains that DNA, but it does look a little bit more, I would say, modern, sporty looking. This is the all-new Pulse One, which is coming in 2 colours, sand and blue. They've kind of lent into the integrated bracelet as well. A lot of their watches previously would come on leather straps or rubber straps or some form of strap description, but they've really lent into this with a integrated bracelet design on it, which I guess goes to prove that integrated bracelets are here to stay. We've got everyone from Moser to IWC to the main brands. You've still got the onion crown. Yes, you've got the coin edge bezel on there. Yes, you've still got some bold dial colours. And of course, you've got that in-house movement that is produced for them by Le Jouperet, but it is their own in-house design. So what do we got? We got grade 5 titanium watch. You get the 2 variants, as I mentioned earlier, the sand and the blue. The blue one being a kind of rich tone of a royal blue, and of course that sand colour being more leaning into the salmon hues, I would say, potentially. Nice size, 41mm, 46.2 in terms of length, so not insanely long, 12.7mm thick, so again, pretty wearable. You've got the titanium bracelet, only the titanium bracelet. As it's integrated, they are not offering any other options on this watch. You've got the 100 meters of water resistance. The bracelet is really nice. They've spent some time on this. A bit like the Moser Streamliner, you can tell extra time has been spent on the bracelet to make sure that it's fully integrated in terms of design as well as functionality, and it wears very well. So you've got brushed top surfaces and you've got little small polished areas in between the links. The butterfly clasp, again, they've spent a bit of time. They've kind of recessed it and rebated it into the inside of the bracelet so that when it's closed, it kind of disappears and you don't have this little gap where you can see the edges of the butterfly clasp. I think this looks great. They've also done a few things with the dial. You have still got, of course, a retrograde function. You've got the top sub-display that gives you the hours. You've got central, what would be seconds hand, but that's actually the minutes hand. And you've got this little bottom retrograde display that gives you your running seconds on there as well. So everything to do with this watch is very much in type with the brand, Chronoswiss, but it's just a modern take on it.
Well, I'm glad you brought Moser up because the bracelet on this watch is very reminiscent of that armadillo styling that you find on the Moser Streamliner. A little bit like the Sydney Opera House or the armadillo at the SEC in Glasgow, funnily enough, and Barbara may have seen that when she was on a recent trip across here. The only thing they've done there is they've maybe taken the centre design of it and added like a framed border down each side, which makes it a little bit different. And the other thing I spotted was it gave me, and this is going to sound really weird because Dave works for the company, it gave me a little bit of a hint of Orage when I was looking at the coin edge, because Chronoswiss has been very artisanal, mixing the contemporary with the classic. You mentioned there the onion crown, something that dates back hundreds of years, but then they use the latest space age technologies like vapor deposition, CVD processes to put the colour on the dial. This one just looks like a very chunky, ruggedized, almost like an Iron Man Mark I from the Cave watch, with different hues and different hints from different brands, Orage, Moser, even Arnold & Son. The way they've got the layout, and obviously Le Jouperet been involved with the processes of the movement inside, I think it's a bit of a win, and it's a total departure from that classic styling that you've seen before.
So we've got the movement being that Le Jouperet manufactured movement, in-house, 31 joules, 28,800 vibrations per hour frequency, 55 hours of power reserve, and you've got that skeletonized rotor on there. Price point, I think you'll be surprised by this, definitely in the attainable end of watches if you put your mind to it. Definitely not inexpensive, but not maybe as much as you were thinking, coming in around that 12,900 Swiss francs mark. Only 100 of each of these being produced. So, maybe when you're considering maybe the more regular fare that you can maybe pick up on the high street, this is something a little bit different that maybe could be considered in the mix as well. So definitely a brand to keep your eye on, because quite often they produce timepieces at price points that you're not necessarily expecting, in a good way that is. So maybe after that then we should move on to do that wrist check thing, because talking of the person that Barbara mentioned earlier, Mizzy L will be jumping up and down at this point going, why have they not done the wrist check? We have a guest with us, and that guest of course is Barbara. So Barbara, maybe you could tell us what you're wearing, because you've always got something interesting on the wrist.
I'm not a guest. I'm part of the wallpaper at this point. Yeah, I am, because I believe that at some point we'll start talking about my brief experience at British Watchmakers Day.
Well, you know what, Barbara? Let's roll right into that and incorporate your wrist check into what you did, what you saw, and what you got up to in Scotland, as well as down south at Watchmakers Day. So start with the wrist check, and then you can tell us all about your trip.
I'm wearing a timepiece that my person purchased for me as a early birthday gift for or at British Watchmakers Day and this was at the Mr. Jones booth. So I was pleasantly surprised. We showed up about 11 p.m. and walked over to Mr. Jones, and they had a tray of pre-production pieces. And I fell in love with this piece, which is called the House Party. It was a limited edition piece when they first released it. 200 pieces. It's an automatic timepiece, and they partnered with a local artist, Katerina Morais, Morais. So I believe it's Morais if it's a French spelling. And it's fun and funky. At the hour it's a house party, but there's like a mirror ball, like a disco ball. So the hour is actually in the disco ball.
You keep talking about house party, and you're old, a bit like Dave and myself. Do you remember Kid and Play?
Of course. Are you kidding me? Yes.
Remember the movie?
Look, yes, the movie. Yes, house party. Yes.
Yeah. Good. Carry on.
So it's crazy and I love it, but it's very tough to tell the actual time. And I don't care because the reality is for 195 pounds, I got to walk out of there with my second Mr. Jones piece because I do have a Mr. Jones piece from a couple of years back, which is a quartz piece. Was an automatic, so my first automatic piece by them.
Okay, Dave, you like coming second? Hit us with it.
We talked about Formex earlier, and I am wearing my Formex Scottish Watches collaboration. So we have that there, which, as you can see, has that. Of course, it's got their suspension system, which you can see if I push up here. So you can see that protection system. And of course, what we can't see at this time is we have an invisible clear case back. But if you do hit that with a UV light, you get a rather special little Easter egg popping up. Check out the previous shows. The show notes will give you a list to it where Ricky did put many pictures of what's going on with that case back. And you have their bracelet with the little butterfly clasp there, of course. You've got that little link there that you can open up, which allows you to have that little bit of breathing room if you've got that warm, cold wrist thing that goes on between winter and summer.
I am wearing, because we have an Italian on the show with us today, it's not my latest and greatest pickup from the folks at Vincentianico. It is the second one going back in time, because this is the one that I wore across to Hong Kong when Dubai Watch Week had their travelling roadshow. They had Horology Forum 10 at the tail end of last year. We got to meet up, myself, Barbara, a whole load of people. Dave was coming the week after, so he missed out on that one, but he was back in Hong Kong to do Raj type stuff. But this one here is called the Arsenale. Is that correct, Barbara?
Yes.
She just agrees. She knows how to play this game. This just follows along with all the other releases these guys put together. Super inexpensive in the grand scheme of things. Nothing is inexpensive in the world of watches, but this one comes in at €650. It has got a fantastic dial that has got a pattern that me and Dave couldn't recognise as having done anywhere else. Yeah, on the website, they actually list it as Cotes de Genève. One of the best features about it is it's got an integrated strap arrangement where you can change it out, use a bracelet, use rubber, you can pick the colours you want, you can buy extra from their website. It is super thin. It's an automatic movement, Mota inside, but it comes in at less than 9mm, which in this day and age, even with really expensive watches, is a feat and a testament. So kudos to those guys. And they're always producing great things at inexpensive price points. The watch that my now wife decided to wear for her wedding was from that brand. So there you go. Yeah. High praise indeed. And actually, when me, Dave, and Simona and a few other people ended up at LVMH doing a factory tour last year, the gentleman who was taking us around and showing us $1 million, $2 million custom timepieces all over the place recognised Vincentianico on her wrist. So yeah, they're making inroads everywhere. Well, that's the wrist checks complete. Barbara is here. She was talking about a British watch. She was in the British Isles. Tell us, how was your trip?
Oh God, I went to this guy's wedding. It was so weird. There were kilts. It was crazy. Kilts and Bulgarians. It was amazing. And I'll make it brief because I know we're talking about Watches and Wonders and the prelude to Watches and Wonders and the other events that are going on out there. But Ricky, again, thanks for having me at your wedding. Kyle was very excited to wear a kilt for the first time and likely the last time in his life. It was great to hang out with Nick from Fears and Raf and meet Simona's family. She was beautiful. An amazing time. Kyle found our hotel, which luckily was directly across the street from your wedding venue. So we literally stumbled out of your wedding and back into our hotel. We found Glasgow to be delightful and lovely and real and gritty and genuine. And I absolutely loved it. I would go back in a heartbeat. So I just, again, thanks for having us. It was amazing. And then going off to British Watchmakers Day, it was a 4.5-hour train ride. We decided to train it as opposed to taking a flight because we figured if we take a flight, it's going to be, an hour and a half in the airport, it's going to wind up being 4 hours at the end of the day anyway. So we did take the train, a much prettier experience. And rolled up about 11 o'clock to British Watchmakers Day. Got to see so many of our friends again, seeing Nick again and Richard, which Dave, I know you already talked about like the whole like Gimlet experience and the party the night before, and getting to chat with Davide Chirato with Braymont, which I like. He was very kind, very friendly, which was great.
Obviously doesn't think you're involved with this show then.
I love the English Brothers so much, and I own a Braymont Solo 32, and he was very kind and welcoming, and to my person as well. He was like chatty and so I don't know. Yeah, I mean, it was a fine experience. Roger Smith, of course, always one of my favorite people to see and hang out with, but getting to actually spend a little bit more time. So here's the thing, and Dave, you know this, like a lot of those brands, but not all of those brands, maybe not even half of those brands actually do show at a lot of the wind up watch fairs, right? So you have several of those brands, like Mr. Jones obviously is there, and Isotope, which come on, Jose, love that man to death. Like, Jose from Isotope and Fears and so your Underdog and all. So I get to see those guys on the regular, at least a couple times a year usually. But there were brands that I didn't even know existed. So I think that was a great thing for me, was getting to meet some of these other brands. The other probably favorite part for me was being approached. So if your listeners are listening that saw me or approached me or asked to take a picture with me or commented when they actually heard my voice and not even seeing my face, but I remember like kind of being at a booth and a guy going, I recognize that voice because he had heard it on the podcast. And he was like, oh, I love when you're on the show. Like I listen to your show. So that was really cool for me. And, that happened several times during the course of the 4 hours that we were there. It was just an incredible experience. And again, getting to meet some of these brands that I had either heard about and not seen or not even heard about at all. I loved it. I know it was only the second edition of British Watchmakers Day, but Jesus Christ, they need to do a full weekend. They can't just do one day. It's got to be like British Watchmakers Weekend because the line was around the corner. Dave, you already talked about it. It was crazy busy. You couldn't move at certain points during the day. And, they do it in 2 different segments. Like, they do the 10 to 2 and then 2 to 6. It was gangbusters. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I don't know if I'll ever have the chance to get back. So I'm glad I had the chance now. And and then we enjoyed London for the 2 nights that we were there and then flew back here to Atlanta. So it was really great. Meeting a lot of the listeners there was really just incredible. So shout out to all the guys that I met out there. And yeah, that's it. Let's go back to talking about Watches and Wonders.
Well, that was a fantastic epilogue, I suppose, to British Watchmakers Day. The final, I can't say nail in the coffin, that's the wrong terminology to use because it's still very much alive and it'll be back next year. The feedback that everybody has had to a fault is that it was exceptional. It was even better than the year before. And I had a slight hesitation that perhaps it would be too samey because it was perhaps the same brands, but it wasn't. It was like meeting your friends after not meeting them for a year. It was getting to see the watches that last year, maybe the stands and the brands were too busy, that you didn't have the chance to properly interface. So there hasn't been one single negative comment that I've heard, read, or seen online. So fantastic job, Alistair, Katja, people at the Alliance, and the brands that came along.
There were a number of Americans there. And obviously people from other countries that are European based, but I ran into like several American bloggers and YouTubers and stuff like that. So it's definitely gaining a little bit more international attention. So good on them and job well done.
Now, getting back to the main event, and one brand you'll definitely not see at British Watchmakers Day, and you won't even see at Watches and Wonders, is Omega, because they don't like to do things like that. They were one of the brands, Swatch Group, that left Baselworld before Baselworld fell in on itself. probably due to the pandemic as well as other reasons. But they've got some cool watches, and Dave likes to buy their cool watches. So Dave, have you bought these cool watches?
No, I have not, and I have things to say about these watches. But yes, you're right. The Swatch Group were probably the first of the big groups to kind of leave Basel, which I think was possibly the marking of the beginning of the demise of that show. And they haven't really done anything with anyone else other than doing their own brand-focused events themselves for a good few years now. Although apparently there are a few rumours that some of their portfolio may or may not be appearing at some events in the coming years. But let's see what the future holds. But to Omega, they've been releasing a few watches over the last, I think, really a year now that they've been doing on the QT and not really shouting too loud about it. And these two definitely fall into that category. Turns out it's another anniversary. Who'd have thunk it? It's the 20th anniversary of the Omega Seamaster Planet Ocean family. This is their toughest, ruggedest, deepest diving range of dive watches, in a range of many, many dive watches that this brand produce. But these start at around 600 metre depth ratings and go all the way down past 6,000 metres. So these are the kind of tough, burly ones. What I'm about to say is not necessarily a thing you would expect to find on a tough diving dive watch, and that is a Worldtimer complication. Not entirely sure you're going through time zones as you go down in depth, but hey, who am I to know?
Do these come with PlayStation controllers?
Well, at least we know this is likely to be able to survive the depths that it goes down to.
Unlike my college boyfriend. Whoocha! Oh, bless his heart.
So what are these? We have got ceramic cases. It's their ZR02 ceramic cases on here, and you've got that based around the deep black vibe and feel that you've got in a few of their other watches. You've also got the Metas chronometer caliber 8938 world time movement that was introduced back in 2017, and a watch that, in my opinion, might be a slightly more suitable watch for it, a member of the Aquaterra family. But you've got two here. You've got black ceramic bezels that have been laser ablated with the relief diving scale on there as well. You've obviously got the helium escape valve, not a big knob like you get in a couple of the other models, but an automatic release, which is at least smooth to the case. You've got those broad arrow hands, you've got the indices that are black PVD coated, and they've been filled with either a white or a grey superluminova colour. You've got the dial, which is a grade 5 titanium base that's been laser ablated to give you that globe as if it's looking over from the North Pole. And you've got a couple of different colourways. You've either got grey, so the grey and black, very kind of monotone, very neutral, or you've got turquoise on there as well. And they've been pretty good at using this colour. Quite a few watches over the last couple of years have beginning to feature more of that turquoise colour in there as well. They've also got a little hint to another watch they released a couple of years ago now. They've got a kind of honeycomb pattern going on just above that globe, just before it meets the rehot ring as well. To be brutally honest with you, I can't quite place this watch. It's a weird one, a big, deep, tough, deep diving, gnarly watch with a Worldtimer on it. Doesn't feel to me to be a bit of a match made in heaven, shall we say. But, you know, I'm sure these will sell. Omega have done some weird and wonderful kind of collaborations of calibers and styles of watches over the years, some of which have worked, some of which haven't worked. But at 45.5 millimeters by nearly 19 millimeters thick and a 53, just under 53 millimeter lug to lug, this is no mean little delicate dress watch by any standards. It is relatively light at 143 grams. That, of course, is helped by that ceramic case on there. And it's coming in at a fairly punchy $14,800, which is definitely a considered purchase. Worldtimer for me should maybe be slightly more elegant. Doesn't need to be a dress watch, but maybe just slightly more elegant than this. But Ricky, I think you probably like the idea and the colour palette of this. Whether you like it as a Worldtimer, that's a different matter.
I quite like it. I don't mind the price actually, because everything has gone up. Omega like increasing their price points at least annually, beating out the likes of Rolex and Tudor and other brands. I do like the look of it, and the helium escape valve, when it is like the Archie luxury horn sticking out of one side, it usually throws the symmetry balance off enough for me to dislike. But no, I actually do. I don't like the one that is monochromatic. It uses the grayscales and the blacks intertwined together, not to give much punch. And the fact that it's black, there are matte surfaces, it diminishes its visual representation. So the fact that the one that you call turquoise, which I think is a little bit more cyan perhaps, that one stands out to me as the one I would go for. Mixing a Worldtimer with a dive watch, and it is a dive watch, but it's only 600 metres. It's not 4,000. It's not the crazy depth that we've been accustomed to over the past few years from different brands. I do like it. Don't mind the price point. The big question I've got is, whatever happened to your new Ploprof? Did you ever get it?
Ploprof is sitting in its box, talking nicely to its younger siblings and also its older titanium compatriot.
Because you did promise us when you ordered it and then you said it turned up. You said you would show us on the show and you have not done that yet. So you're a bad boy. Now, Barbara, what do you think of this one?
I can't get out of my head that Dave used the term deep black vibe to describe this watch. Very Kendrick Lamar halftime show at this point. So I love that you did that. So I'm going to say I don't dislike this watch, but I want to bring that deep black vibe into Mission to the Pink. Shall we do that? If we're talking about Omega, and Omega being a brand that doesn't show, obviously, at the big shows anymore. And yes, you're right, Dave. They pulled out of Basel World. They were the first major brand pulling whatever it was, 18, 19 brands out of Basel World. I will say this, Swatch Group's higher end brands, Breguet, Blancpain, they still do show at the Watchtime Fair in New York City. Jackie Dro, these guys are still showing there. I don't know if they will yet for this year, for the 2025 edition, but that is one of the few fairs that they are still showing their faces at. But taking that big black dive into a Mission to the Pink, I'm sure you guys have seen in the last 3 days that the newest MoonSwatch was out. Can we get an opinion on the Pepto-Bismol Pink?
The Pepto-Abysmal.
This is the second of the Swatch collaborative watches they've done in pink. They obviously did the Blancpain 50 Fathoms in the pink maybe about a month ago. That one I actually found quite charming in some ways. I think this is maybe now the 31st or 32nd iteration of course, that MoonSwatch. So they are not exactly not milking the situation on this, milking by taking a cough syrup. But yeah, it's definitely a pink you're not going to miss on the wrist. It's still got that awful strap in it, and considering they're now making some great aftermarket Swatch straps that you can buy separately, I'm amazed they haven't come round to actually changing out the strap. But of course, why would they when they can make you buy other straps and make some more money at the same time? But not that this is a money-making exercise at 31, 32 watches deep. Of course not. They're doing it because there's a demand for them. But I guess they are doing it because the demand is still there. And if people were stopped buying them and people weren't queuing up still to buy these, maybe not like the early days, but they are still hard to come by.
Are they queuing up though? Are they still queuing up?
There's still definitely small queues appearing, because when they first hit the market, it does take maybe now around, I don't know, a 4 to 6 week period to maybe get one relatively easily, unlike the months and months it was previously to get them. But yes, it's a money maker for them, and you only need to look at some of the big financial reports that have come out over the last few months to say most of the brands are maybe not in quite a buoyant a space as they have been over the last 5 or 6 years. Market's definitely tough out there, but Swatch is one of the brands that's definitely holding things together for the greater Swatch group. And of course, why would they not continue with that? Because pennies in the bank keeps everyone happy.
Very true. And this is the episode of Innuendos and Double Entendres, because we've had all kinds of stuff, deep black vibes. We've got Tickle Pink. We had Dave talking about edging there, and even a little bit of milking. So yes, it's all going ahead in this episode of the show. But we're going to now talk about one of our friends, Andrew from IWC. He used to work at a different brand, went upscale a little bit, moved on in life, got the dream job he was always after within IWC, and he's been telling us to keep an eye on Brad Pitt, what he's been up to, because there's a movie. And we alluded to it last year because we got to see a little bit of the behind the scenes when we were down at the Formula One at Silverstone here in the UK. Well, the movie trailer has dropped. Andrew was very keen to tell me to have a look at it and watch to see what was going on. Dave, you're a bit of a fanatic when it comes to motorsport, not just water sports. So what did you think of the trailer?
Yeah, do you know, this is a much hype movie, and it seems to be going to be big. Now, I'm going to reserve judgment till we actually see the movie, of course, because there's a lot of trailers doing the rounds and little snippets making their way out into the wild. I hope they aren't the highlights that kind of ruin the whole movie, as sometimes can be the case, but lots of brands are investing a lot of money, including, of course, Formula One themselves, to get in and about action in this movie. Ricky, you were there with me when we were down, luckily and very kindly, with Moser last year at Silverstone, and we saw, in fact, the whole pit setup that looked, in fact, like one of the teams that was racing that weekend. But no, it was the set of the film crew, all set up, ready to be used for filming parts of this movie, because they were firmly embedded in the Formula One circus as it does the world trip. I think it's going to be interesting. I think it's going to be cool. If it does anything to get Formula One into even more people's eyeballs and kind of cognizant awareness, then I think that's a good thing. Let's see how it actually pans out. I've got a feeling there's going to be a wee cheesy edge to it, but then so does Top Gun, and there's obviously people involved in this that have been involved in Top Gun as well.
Well, it's Jerry Bruckheimer, right? It's the same director as Top Gun, as Maverick. Jerry Bruckheimer directed it, right?
You're correct. They are in and about it. So there's going to be that kind of slightly schmaltzy, cheesy edge to it as well. I don't think it's going to be one of those grittier movies, but hey, let's see how it pans out. And it's due out into cinemas, I believe, around about the end of June the 27th, possibly, to be precise.
No, it looked really good. The trailer, as Dave says, hopefully they don't just load that up, or the multiple teasers that will be coming out over the subsequent months, because that's the way Hollywood do things. I generally don't watch trailers anymore because it gives you the entire plot, story, and ending all in one. So what's the point of actually watching the movie? But we did get to see a little bit behind the scenes. We saw Brad Pitt wandering around. Some of our friends who were down at Silverstone at the same time managed to capture pictures, if not selfies, with some of the stars of this movie. And they did have their own area within the paddock where they had their own setup, as if they were a genuine Formula One team. And we remember people were telling us behind the scenes down there that they were actually using genuine Formula 2 vehicles that were done up in body kits, fiberglass and add-on parts just to emulate the look and feel of F1. So looking forward to that. And that leads into asking what we've been up to. And Brad Pitt features in something that I've been up to. As everybody knows, I like watching movies, and there was a movie that was mentioned in a YouTube short, and it featured Charlie Sheen and my favourite brand of car, and I thought, why have I never heard of this before? So I went looking online platforms, Amazon Prime, Netflix, etc., couldn't find this thing. It's called No Man's Land, and that's the name of multiple films that have been out over the past X amount of decades. But this one was from 1987, just around about the time he was doing Wall Street and getting into his groove, had done Ferris Bueller's Day Off, etc. This is the origin of the cop rookie who ends up infiltrating a gang that steals XYZ. So this has been done in Point Break, it's been done in The Fast and the Furious, and it was originally done here. So fantastic movie. The first time Brad Pitt ever appeared on celluloid, he was a waiter wearing a mullet, can you believe it? So yeah, one of the most beautiful men in the world, donning a mullet back in the mid-80s in a movie with Charlie Sheen. So I watched that. That was pretty cool. Barbara, what have you been up to recently? Because you've been on your travels.
Yeah, so the whole reason I was actually in New York to begin with, if we're going back to Swatch Group here, was Longines invite me every year to New York for their yearly, they actually show us all of their releases in, early in the year, the things that are going to come out for the rest of the year. I can't talk about any of them at this point because not all of them are under embargo, but they have some really exciting stuff coming up with regard to several of their timepieces. And Dave, as you mentioned, like Swatch Group doesn't always show at fairs, but they tend to do their own thing. Like Rado does their own thing, and Longines definitely does this. And shout out to them because that allowed me to be in New York, and I just hung out one extra day to be at the Formex event. That's why I just got back, and then obviously Watch the Wonders and whatever the hell is going to come next at this point. So that's it.
Well, what's going to come next is the end of the show almost. Dave, do you want to jump in, tell us what you've been up to briefly, and then we're going to talk about a brand that we didn't actually get a chance to see last year at Watches and Wonders. They were too busy for little old us, but this time around they righted that wrong, and we're going to be seeing them, but we'll tell you about that after Dave tells us what he's been up to.
Dave, it has to be said, hasn't been up to a whole lot. He had, as you know from possibly the last show if you listened to it, been involved in the launch of a watch at the other thing, the real day job. But yes, I got that, and that was a busy week that took over a lot of time. Outside that, yeah, a couple of sad bits to note as well. Eddie Jordan, we were talking about Formula One, sadly passed away, along with that boxer guy who apparently if he hit you, you stayed down, that being George Foreman. Two kind of legends of the 80s, 90s, 2000s, sadly both passing away a little bit before their time in most cases as well. But yes, that's the sad news. But yes, let's get on to that last watch before we round out this show. A brand that does show at Watches and Wonders.
Are we going to finish with a bang?
Yes, indeed. A big bang at that. Of course, that's the brand that some people love to not love so much, but we do tend to quite enjoy certain things they do, that being Hublot. It's a brand that definitely hasn't got particularly strong connections to the Irish-Dutch contingent within the watch fraternity, we have to say. But yes, the name of this watch is the Hublot Big Bang Mecha 10 Aspen One. This is a collaborative watch. In fact, it's not the first. I believe it's the third collaboration with Hublot and Aspen One, which is that ski resort, of course, in Aspen, Colorado, United States. They seem to have had this ongoing for quite a considerable period now. In fact, 2019, if me looking at my notes reminds me. But yes, there was an event. An infamous snowboarder, that being Shaun White, has introduced a new winter sports competition called the Snow League that is taking place at Aspen One, and they have introduced this watch as a bit of a celebration. Of course, the Mecha 10 has been introduced in a smaller 42mm size, but they have firmly sat on the original 45mm size here. This watch, I'm going to say it, has got strong Stormtrooper vibes about it. It's gone full on black and white. Matte black ceramic midcase, white ceramic bezel, white rubber-lined calfskin strap on there as well with contrasting black stitching, black bridges on the kind of dial and the movement. Little splashes of red here and there where you've got the power reserve, and it's a manually wound watch. 10 days of power. Pretty impressive, to be honest with you. They are one of the brands that are known for having pretty punchy power reserves in some of their models. $27,400. It's not limited edition. I think this is actually pretty cool. I've seen a couple of Hublots in the past that I've been taken by. In fact, if I remember rightly, Ricky, a concrete version we saw over in Dubai. I think 2 editions of the Dubai Watch Week ago, we saw that. That one kind of piqued my interest. Have I bought or would I buy an Hublot? Not really. I don't think they're necessarily massively in my wheelhouse. Doesn't mean that they don't do some stuff that I find quite funky and interesting, and that concrete one was cool. But this one, Ricky, you've been a long-term harbouring desire for a white ceramic watch, and I do feel that this one could be very much a you watch.
Well, that itch has been scratched. Not that scratch has been itched, that Dave likes to say, because, as I mentioned in the previous edition of the show, Simona, as a wedding gift, got me a white ceramic watch, a 7 Friday. So I have already got that sorted out. But when it comes to Hublot, it's the brand that people love to hate, and not really for any good reason, because there are many other brands out there that charge premium price points for watches that don't deserve it. And when you look at the technology, the investment, what Hublot have actually crafted behind the scenes, their ceramic sapphire technologies are unparalleled within the world. Even Rolex cannot emulate the red colour of ceramic that Hublot have managed to get a hold of, produce, and trademark and patent and stop other people from duplicating. There have been a number of releases that they have dropped throughout the years that I have really, really appreciated. I've never bought one. I've been close, but I've never bought one, and obviously over the past couple of years I've been saving my pennies for a house move, a wedding, etc. But now that I've licked my wounds financially, then potentially. And there was a specific release maybe a year and a half ago when we were across in Zurich, meeting the guys at Moser, doing a tour there, and obviously the folks over at Schaffhausen at IWC. I stopped off at a Hublot boutique and I saw this beautiful black number, and it'll be linked in the show notes because I can't remember what it was called, but it almost looked like the diamond that would float above the head of your character in the Sims game, but in black. So that was stunning. This one is quite nice. I remember Watchfinder a number of years ago allowed me to delve through their vaults, pick a couple of watches to play with that normally I wouldn't get the opportunity to, and I picked a Hublot Big Bang that was similar to this one, although it had more, perhaps, blue-infused carbon fibre and denim. What a collaboration and a mix those two materials were. But this one, I quite like it. I like the Stormtrooper vibes, and they produced a number in the range over the past few years. But the main reason it's included just at the tail end of this show is because, as I mentioned, we have got a meeting with the folks at Hublot. We'll get to see what they have not announced yet, the things that they're bringing out throughout the year. And unlike perhaps the new Irishman that used to be Dutch, we don't mind Hublot.
So my take is that if Julian Tornare, or Tornare, because he is half Italian as well, if he's heading up a brand, I'm interested. I've never been a hater of Hublot. I love a black and white watch, just period. I like when IWC has done that, in the recent past. So I'm excited to see the direction that obviously this is his first Watches and Wonders as the CEO of Hublot. Last Watches and Wonders, he was Tag Heuer. The Watches and Wonders before that, he was Zenith. So he has worked his way through the LVMH ranks. Obviously, he's been a guest on the show. I'm sure that'll be added to the show notes, that episode. I adore him. I love his vision for any of the brands that he tends to captain. And I'm excited to see whatever it is that they're going to be putting forth because they're under his realm now.
That is a very good point. I forgot to bring that up, actually. Yeah, Julian has been on the show a number of times. We've met him across the globe. It could have been Dubai. It could have been in Geneva. It could have been here in Scotland. I'm trying to actually think the last time I met him in person was probably at the big, massive extreme go-karting event. I'll call it that. And that was in Ayrshire, in a quarry, with Cal Cox and all these big, massive buggies that were powered by electric. And he was there because Zenith were obviously involved in all that kind of stuff. He's talked about it at length when he was on the show. Ecological issues are close to his heart, as are the brand. But Hublot, well, let's just see what he manages to do there, because my thoughts were he's almost been taken around different brands as a troubleshooter. Perhaps they need a little bit righting of their way. He's come in, he's managed to smooth things out, set them on their path, and then he moves on to his next project. Zenith are doing great guns. We're obviously going to be catching up with those guys over there in just a week's time. And Hublot, I'm looking forward to seeing what they're doing, because 2 years ago, they really did impress us with their technology. And although a lot of people love to hate them, we see things they do well, we see things they do badly, as do all brands across the range. And that is pretty much the end of this show, so you'll have to stay tuned to our Instagram channel, at Scottish Watches. Follow us, make sure that if you're listening to the audio podcast, because that comes out ahead of the videos, follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, wherever it is you listen to podcasts, subscribe, drop us a review if you like what you hear. It attracts more people to the show. The more people that listen, the better guests that we will get on, the more we can furnish you with information and entertainment, hopefully. And yes, it will be a couple of days before we look at our passports. We head off to the safety deposit boxes. We leave anything of value there before we jump on a plane across to Switzerland. Any final thoughts, Barbara?
No, just happy to see you guys. Hopefully we can, I know you're not there as long as I am. I'm there for 5 days, but hopefully we can at least grab a lunch like we like to do, maybe with Shruti. That would be great. And that's really it. And just if you guys are following along, I will have some pre-writes heading up on Watchinista on their website, and we'll be writing about some of this stuff, which will come out in the spring edition of Vanity Fair on time.
Brilliant. And Dave, anything people should watch out for from Orage or anything else you're involved in?
Well, of course, what they should be doing is checking out the show notes before they do anything. We'll also have a list of the events that are on and how many brands are on there, because we didn't get time to actually talk about that, and there is lots of events going on. There's obviously, of course, Watches and Wonders and many of the other little sub-shows going on with lots of brands and lots of interesting things. So all of those have some form of public access on some of the days. So if you're planning to get yourself over to Geneva, check out the show notes for a kind of comprehensive guide of all the things that are going on. And then, of course, you can make a decision about what you want to see and where you want to be. So yeah, check that out, because some of them are free to enter and some will require you getting tickets. Outside of that, though, tune in on Thursday for the next episode. Something exciting coming along from one of our favourite brands to listen out for. And of course, if you've listened to this as it came out, check out around about a week later on YouTube, and you should be able to see all of our pretty faces talking directly at you through the screen.
That's a good shout out. If you listen to the audio podcast, then you're thinking, well, why should I bother watching the video? There'll be other things incorporated into the video content. Thanks to Gav, he's a very humorous individual. So you'll probably want to listen along and then watch along at the end of the week, because it's a slightly different way of doing things. It's like reading a book and then catching up with the movie version later on. Slightly different, but the same. And that is it. So thank you for listening. Thank you for watching, and we'll catch you again soon.
Take care.
Bye.